Waves and windows, the healing pattern that helped keep me going. Understanding the waves and windows healing pattern in antidepressant withdrawal changed everything for me. It helped me make sense of the setbacks, recognize signs of healing, and hold on to hope during some of the darkest days. This is my personal experience of waves, windows, and the slow, non-linear journey of recovery. One of the hardest things about antidepressant withdrawal is not knowing what is happening to you, not knowing why symptoms change from one day to the next, not knowing whether you're healing, relapsing, or somehow losing yourself altogether. When I was in the depth of withdrawal, I spent countless hours searching for answers because nothing made sense anymore. I needed someone to explain what was happening and perhaps, more importantly, what I could expect moving forward. A few months into my own withdrawal journey, someone shared an article with me about the waves and windows healing pattern. Looking back, it was one of the most important things I ever read, not because it made my symptoms disappear, but because it helped me understand that healing was rarely a straight line. It helped me understand that setbacks did not necessarily mean failure, but most importantly, it gave me hope. In the beginning, I didn't experience windows at all. Withdrawal felt relentless. The physical symptoms were intense, the emotional symptoms were overwhelming, and fear seemed to follow me everywhere. Every day was survival. At that stage, I couldn't imagine feeling better. I couldn't imagine relief, and I couldn't imagine ever feeling like myself again. Then, around a year after stopping antidepressants, something happened. I experienced my first window. It only lasted minutes. If I hadn't known what I was looking for, I might have missed it entirely. But for those few precious moments, it felt as though everything lifted. The noise quietened, the fear softened, the intensity eased. For the first time in months, I felt like I could hear my own thoughts again. I could breathe. I felt calmer, lighter, more like me. The window disappeared almost as quickly as it had arrived, but it left something incredibly important behind. Proof. Proof that healing was happening. Proof that my nervous system was still capable of finding its way back. That tiny glimpse of relief became something I held on to during the difficult days that followed. Many people in withdrawal describe healing as occurring in waves and windows. A wave is a period where symptoms become more intense again, and a window is a period where symptoms ease, even if only slightly. What makes this pattern so confusing is that healing doesn't happen in a steady upward direction. We naturally expect recovery to be linear. We imagine that once we start to feel better, we should continue to feel better. Withdrawal often doesn't work that way. As time passed, I started experiencing more windows. At first, they only lasted minutes, then hours. Eventually, I experienced good days. Later, good weeks. Eventually, even good months. But the process was anything but straightforward. Some of the hardest moments came after I'd already experienced relief. When you've been suffering for so long, a window can feel like a lifeline. So when the wave returns, it can feel devastating. I cannot count the number of times I wondered if I had somehow gone backwards. I would think I was finally getting better, only to find myself consumed by symptoms once again. Thankfully, because I understood the waves and windows pattern, I had something to hold on to. Every time a wave returned, I reminded myself that healing could look like this. I reminded myself that recovery was often messy, unpredictable, and frustrating. I reread that article over and over again. I even shared it with my family and friends because it helped them to understand what I was experiencing too. Over time, I began to notice a pattern. The windows were gradually becoming longer, the waves were gradually becoming shorter. Healing was happening, even when it didn't feel like it. One thing I think it's important to understand is that windows are not always dramatic. Sometimes people imagine a window means feeling completely normal again. That wasn't my experience. Many of my early windows were incredibly subtle. Sometimes a window simply meant feeling a little less afraid. Sometimes it meant sleeping slightly better. Sometimes it meant having enough energy to make a meal, enjoy a conversation, or feel interested in something again. Sometimes it was noticing that my body hurt a little less. Sometimes it was laughing without forcing it. These tiny shifts mattered. They were signs that something was changing beneath the surface. In fact, there were times when my family and friends would notice these changes before I did. They would tell me I seemed calmer, more engaged, less anxious, or more hopeful. Often, I couldn't see the progress myself because I was consumed by withdrawal and focused on how far I still had to go. This is one of the reasons I encourage people to track their journey if they can, not obsessively, but gently. Whether you are tapering or navigating withdrawal, recording your symptoms, emotions, and small improvements can help you spot progress that might otherwise go unnoticed. Looking back, I wish I'd done this more consistently. I often made notes on my phone, but I didn't always appreciate how meaningful those small shifts really were. As the years passed, something else changed. The waves didn't disappear overnight, but they gradually lost their intensity. Symptoms would still return from time to time, but they became less severe, less disruptive, and often I referred to these as mini waves. The symptoms were still noticeable, but they no longer stopped me from living my life. I could function, I could take care of myself, I could spend time with loved ones, I could do normal things again. The waves no longer stole everything from me. Eventually, those mini waves became less frequent too. This is why understanding the waves and windows healing pattern was so important for me. Without that knowledge, I think I would have spent years believing that every setback meant something had gone terribly wrong. I would have questioned whether my original symptoms had returned. I would have wondered whether I still needed antidepressants, and I would have feared that I was relapsing. Instead, understanding this pattern helped me stay the course. It helped me recognize that healing could be slow. It helped me understand that recovery could involve 2 steps forward and 10 steps back. Most importantly, it helped me keep going when I felt like giving up. Of course, not everyone experiences waves and windows in the same way. Healing is deeply individual. Some people notice obvious windows, others experience much more subtle improvements. Some people heal more quickly, while others take much longer. There is no single timeline and no one-size-fits-all healing pattern. But if you're in a difficult wave right now, I want you to know this. A wave is not necessarily the whole story. Sometimes healing is happening quietly beneath the surface long before we can fully see it. Sometimes progress arrives in the form of tiny glimmers rather than giant breakthroughs. And sometimes those tiny glimmers are where hope begins. Because healing rarely arrives all at once. Often it arrives one small window at a time. Because I wish I'd had access to this information much earlier in my own journey, I created the resources I wish I'd had when I was navigating tapering, withdrawal, and healing. One of the biggest lessons I learned was the importance of recognizing and recording the small signs of progress that can so easily be missed during withdrawal. That's why I created my guided tapering journal, a gentle companion designed to help you track your symptoms, notice patterns, reflect on your experience, and capture those small windows of healing along the way. My memoir, Swallowed Whole, shares my personal story in full, while my survivor-created guides explore the many lessons, insights, and tools that help me navigate the journey. My hope is simply that it helps others feel a little less lost, a little more informed, and a little less alone. If you're in a wave today, please hold on. The wave you're experiencing right now is not where your story ends. Sometimes healing whispers before it speaks loudly, and sometimes a tiny window is all the proof we need that better days are still ahead.